Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Young, and today we are diving deep into one of the most underrated, underappreciated, and honestly most life changing topics I've ever covered on this show. We're talking about mobility, calisthenics, stretching, yoga, and every beautiful form of movement that keeps your body working the way it was designed to work, not just for this year, but for the rest of your life. This is episode 104, and if you've been with me from the beginning, you know I don't waste your time. Every episode is built around real, practical, applicable knowledge that you can take and use today. So get comfortable because today we're going long and every word of it is going to matter to you. Why mobility is the foundation of peak performance. And let's start at the very beginning because too many people skip this part. When most people hear the word performance, they immediately think about strength, speed, power, or endurance. They think about how much weight they can move, how fast they can run, how high they can jump. And while all of those things matter, none of them are sustainable. None of them are even fully achievable without a foundation of mobility underneath them. Think of your body as a machine, a beautifully engineered, incredibly complex machine. Now imagine that machine has joints that don't move through their full range of motion, muscles that are perpetually tight and shortened, connective tissue that hasn't been properly maintained. That machine is going to break down. Maybe not today, maybe not this month, but eventually, and often at the worst possible time. The breakdown could come as a nagging shoulder injury, a lower back that gives out, knees that ache on every stair, or hips so tight they limit every single athletic movement you try to make. Mobility work, and I'm using that as an umbrella term for calisthenics, stretching, yoga, foam rolling, dynamic movement, and all related practices, is the maintenance protocol for that machine. It is the oil in the engine, the lubrication in the joints, the spaciousness in the connective tissue that allows everything else to function at its highest level. When you train your mobility consistently, you don't just feel better, you move better, you recover faster, you perform at higher levels, and you stay in the game far, far longer than your peers who neglect this piece. I've spoken with elite athletes, weekend warriors, coaches, physical therapists, and longevity researchers, and the consensus is always the same. The people who age gracefully, who stay active and powerful and pain free well into their 60s, 70s, and beyond are almost always the people who made mobility a non negotiable part of their training long before it became a problem. They didn't wait for injury to force them into it. They invested in it proactively, and the returns have been extraordinary. What calisthenics actually does for your body: full body strength through range of motion. Calisthenics trains your muscles to produce force through their complete range of motion, not just in a limited arc like many machine based exercises. This builds functional, transferable strength, joint health, and longevity. Because calisthenics uses your own body weight as resistance, it loads your joints in a natural, proportional way, strengthening the tendons and ligaments that support them without excessive compressive forces. Neuromuscular coordination. Calisthenics demands that your nervous system and muscular system work in precise harmony. This coordination is a performance multiplier that carries over into every sport and physical activity you pursue. Calisthenics is one of the oldest forms of physical training in human history, and yet it remains one of the most misunderstood. People often think of it as just push ups and pull ups, beginner stuff you graduate from once you get into a gym. That thinking is completely backwards. True calisthenics, at its highest expression, involves handstands, human flags, front levers, planche progressions, pistol squats, and movements that demand levels of body control, strength, and spatial awareness that most gym athletes will never develop. But here's what I want you to focus on for the purposes of today's conversation. Even at its most fundamental level, calisthenics trains your body through full ranges of motion. A deep body weight squat is a mobility drill and a strength exercise simultaneously. A controlled push up engages your core, your shoulders, your chest, and your triceps through a complete arc of movement. A body weight raw teaches your back muscles to pull while your hips remain in line, demanding both strength and stability at once. This is the beauty of calisthenics. It doesn't separate strength from mobility, it develops them together, the way nature intended. The deep science of stretching. Let's talk about stretching because I think there's more confusion and more outdated thinking around this topic than almost anything else in the fitness world. For years, the conventional wisdom said you should stretch before you work out, static stretching, holding a position for 30 to 60 seconds to warm up the muscles. Then the research started coming in and it told a very different story. Static stretching before intense exercise can actually temporarily reduce muscle force production. So everyone swung the pendulum hard the other way and started saying stretching is a waste of time entirely. As usual, the truth lives somewhere far more nuanced in the middle. There are two primary categories of stretching that matter for peak performance and longevity. The first is dynamic stretching, which is what you should do before training. Dynamic stretching involves moving your joints and muscles through their full range of motion repeatedly with control without holding any position for long. Leg swings, arm circles, hip rotations, thoracic twists, walking lunges with a reach. These movements increase blood flow, raise your tissue temperature, activate the nervous system, and prepare your body for the demands about to be placed on it. Dynamic stretching is not just warming up, it is an active form of mobility training that over time genuinely improves your range of motion. The second category is static stretching, which is what you should do after training in the evening on recovery days and anytime your goal is to genuinely lengthen tissue and improve flexibility over time. Static stretching works by allowing the nervous system to relax its protective tension response, what's called the myotatic reflex, so that the muscle can gradually release into a longer position. You need time for this to happen, which is why you hold the position. 30 seconds is the minimum. 60 to 90 seconds per stretch is where the real change begins to occur. 2 minutes per stretch, applied consistently over weeks and months, produces genuine, lasting increases in flexibility that translate directly into better movement quality and reduced injury risk. There's also a third, more advanced approach called PNF stretching, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, which involves contracting the muscle against resistance before relaxing into a deeper stretch. PNF produces faster flexibility gains than passive static stretching alone, and it's used extensively by physical therapists, elite coaches, and performance specialists. It's worth learning and incorporating once you've built a consistent base. Yoga, the complete mobility practice. Flexibility through progressive overload. Yoga applies the same progressive overload principle that governs strength training, but to your range of motion. Each practice asks slightly more of your body than the last, gradually expanding what's possible. Strength and stability in lengthened positions. Unlike passive stretching, yoga requires you to hold active positions under muscular tension. This builds what coaches call active flexibility, the ability to control and stabilize movement throughout your full range. Breath is a performance tool. Yoga teaches you to use your breath to manage physical and mental tension simultaneously. This breathwork practice directly improves recovery, stress regulation, and athletic endurance. Mind body awareness. Consistent yoga practice develops a refined sensitivity to your own body, where tension lives, where weakness hides, where imbalances exist. This awareness is one of the most powerful injury prevention tools available to any athlete. I want to speak directly to anyone listening who's dismissed yoga as not a real workout or something other people do. I get it. I used to think that way too. And then I spent 3 weeks with my hips so tight I could barely run. And a physical therapist handed me a yoga program and told me it was the most important thing I could do for my body. That was a turning point in how I understood performance training. Yoga, at its core, is a system for developing complete integrated physical function. It simultaneously builds flexibility, strength, balance, body awareness, and breath control. It addresses asymmetries between the left and right side of your body. It opens up hip flexors that have been crushed by hours of sitting. It creates space in your thoracic spine, which is one of the most mobility restricted areas in modern humans due to desk work and screen time. It lengthens your hamstrings, which directly reduces lower back pain. It strengthens your posterior chain, the glutes, hamstrings, and spinal erectors through positions that most gym programs never touch. And it does all of this in a low impact way that you can sustain indefinitely, regardless of age. Mobility and longevity. The connection most people miss. Here's something I want you to sit with for a moment. One of the most reliable predictors of all cause mortality, meaning the risk of dying from any cause, is something called grip strength. Another highly predictive marker is your ability to sit down on the floor and stand back up without using your hands. These aren't random tests, they are measurements of functional physical capability. They tell researchers how well maintained your musculoskeletal system is, how efficiently your nervous system communicates with your muscles, and how much physical reserve you have in your body. And the people who score well on these tests consistently are the people who have prioritized mobility throughout their lives. Longevity, in the context of physical performance, isn't just about living a long time. It's about maintaining your capability, your independence, your quality of life, and your ability to do the things you love for as many years as possible. It's about being the person in your 70s who can hike a mountain, play with your grandchildren on the floor, carry their own groceries, and wake up without chronic pain. That person doesn't happen by accident. That person made choices consistently for decades. And those choices almost always included some form of regular mobility work. When you stretch regularly, you maintain the elasticity of your fascia, the connective tissue web that encases every muscle, organ, and structure in your body. When fascia becomes restricted and dehydrated from inactivity, it creates a kind of full body stiffness that compounds over time and eventually limits your movement in ways that feel permanent. But they're not permanent. Fascia is remarkably responsive to consistent patient work. Regular stretching and mobility practice literally rehydrates and reorganizes fascial tissue, restoring its elasticity and allowing your body to move freely again. This is one of the most powerful anti aging interventions that exists, and it requires nothing but consistency and time. Yoga and calisthenics both contribute to what researchers call functional reserve, the physical capacity you have beyond what's needed for baseline daily tasks. The more functional reserve you carry, the more able you are to handle unexpected physical demands, recover from illness or injury, and maintain independence as you age. Building and protecting functional reserve through mobility training is one of the highest return investments you can make in your long term health. The beginner's blueprint. Plan one, starting from scratch. Lifetime mobility plan. Number one, this first plan is for anyone who is starting from zero. No current flexibility practice, possibly some gym background, but never really committed to systematic mobility work. This plan is gentle, progressive, and designed to build a sustainable habit before it builds physical capacity. The goal for the first 4 weeks isn't dramatic flexibility gains. The goal is consistency. You are training your nervous system to accept new ranges of motion, and that takes time and repetition, not aggression. Weeks 1 to 2, morning activation, 10 minutes daily. Begin every morning with 10 minutes of gentle movement before you look at your phone or start your day. Start with 5 deep diaphragmatic breaths lying on your back. Move into a cat cow sequence on hands and knees, 10 repetitions each direction. Follow with a child's pose held for 60 seconds, a seated forward fold held for 60 seconds, and a lying piriformis stretch, figure four position, held for 30 seconds each side. That's it, nothing heroic, just 10 minutes, every single morning, non negotiable. Weeks 3 to 4, adding an evening practice, 15 minutes. Once the morning routine is locked in as a genuine habit, meaning you've done it at least 10 of the first 14 days, add a 15-minute evening practice. In the evening, your body's warmer and more receptive to deeper stretching. Focus on the areas that hold the most tension for most people. Hip flexors in a low lunge held for 90 seconds each side, hamstrings in a standing forward fold held for 90 seconds, chest and shoulders in a doorway stretch, or supported fish pose held for 60 seconds, and your thoracic spine over a foam roller or rolled up blanket for 2 minutes. End with 3 minutes of legs up the wall, which is a restorative inversion that calms the nervous system and promotes recovery. Month two, introducing body weight movement. By month two, you have a morning and evening flexibility practice that is genuinely consistent. Now you add 3 body weight calisthenics sessions per week, each about 20 to 30 minutes. These sessions include deep body weight squats, working towards sitting in a deep squat for 60 seconds continuously, push up progressions, hip hinge movements like good mornings and Romanian deadlift patterns with body weight, and basic core work like dead bugs and bird dogs. Every session begins with your dynamic warm up and ends with 5 minutes of static stretching, targeting whatever worked hardest that day. Month three and beyond, building the lifelong pattern. By month three, you've built the foundation of a practice that can sustain you for the rest of your life. Continue with your morning and evening mobility work, 3 calisthenics sessions per week, and begin introducing one 30-minute yoga class or yoga video per week, either in person or at home. This weekly yoga session is your deep maintenance work. It addresses the cumulative patterns in your body, the places where tension tends to collect and tighten, and it gives you a dedicated hour of intentional, mindful movement that does wonders for both your body and your mental state. Plan one, the weekly schedule written out. Let me make this even more concrete for you. Here's what a week looks like on plan one once you've completed month two and are moving into the long term version of this program. This is a 7-day structure that you can adapt to your life, but the principles should remain intact. Monday, morning mobility routine, 10 minutes. Evening calisthenics session, 30 minutes. Post session stretching, 10 minutes. Tuesday, morning mobility routine, 10 minutes. Evening flexibility practice, 15 minutes, focusing on hips and hamstrings. Wednesday, morning mobility routine, 10 minutes. Evening calisthenics session, 30 minutes. Post session stretching in 10 minutes. Thursday, morning mobility routine, 10 minutes. Evening yoga session, 30 to 45 minutes. This is your midweek reset. Friday, morning mobility routine, 10 minutes. Evening calisthenics session, 30 minutes. Post session stretching, 10 minutes. Saturday, morning mobility routine, 10 minutes. Active recovery, a long walk, easy swim, light hike, or 30 minutes of leisure movement. Evening flexibility practice, 15 minutes. Sunday, morning mobility routine, 10 minutes. Full rest or a restorative yoga session, 30 minutes. Reflect on the week, prepare for the next one. Notice that the morning routine happens every single day without exception. The daily consistency is the anchor of the entire program. Everything else can flex. The calisthenics days can shift, the yoga sessions can move, but those 10 morning minutes are sacred. They signal to your body and your nervous system that mobility is a priority. And that signal, repeated every single day, creates profound physiological change over time. Plan 2, the Intermediate Performers Program. Lifetime Mobility Plan number 2. Plan 2 is for the person who already has some training background. Maybe you've been lifting weights for a few years. Maybe you run or cycle. Maybe you've dabbled in yoga but never made it a serious part of your routine. You have baseline fitness, but your mobility has always been the afterthought, the thing you tell yourself you'll focus on later. This plan assumes you can already handle physical training, and it focuses on restructuring your approach so that mobility moves from the margins to the center of your practice. The core philosophy of Plan 2 is integration. Instead of treating mobility as a separate thing you do in addition to your real training, you begin weaving it into every session so that strength and flexibility develop together. This is the approach used by the most elite functional movement practitioners in the world, and it produces results that are far superior to treating them as separate domains. Daily foundation. 15-minute morning mobility routine covering full body dynamic movement, spinal decompression, and hip opening. non negotiable every day. Training sessions 4 sessions per week combining calisthenics, yoga flow, and targeted static stretching. Each session is 60 minutes with mobility built into the warm up and cool down. Weekly deep work. One dedicated 60-minute yin yoga or deep stretching session per week focused on connective tissue, held positions, and parasympathetic recovery. Quarterly assessment. Every 3 months, reassess your ranges of motion, identify restriction patterns, and adjust your program to address the areas showing the least progress. Plan 2, the session structure and detail. Let me walk you through exactly what a Plan 2 training session looks like from start to finish. This is a complete 60-minute session structure that you will repeat 4 times per week with variations in the specific exercises chosen. The dynamic warm up, 10 minutes. Every session begins with 10 minutes of deliberate dynamic movement. This is not casual walking on a treadmill. This is targeted, intentional mobilization of the joints you're about to train. You will move through hip circles, spinal rotations, leg swings in both the sagittal and frontal planes, shoulder circles, wrist circles, ankle rolls, and 2 or 3 sun salutation flows from yoga to integrate your breath with your movement. By the time this 10 minutes is complete, you should feel genuinely warm, your joints should feel lubricated, and your nervous system should be switched on and ready for work. The calisthenics block, 25 minutes. The middle of your session is your strength work, done with body weight. In Plan 2, you're working toward more challenging progressions. Pike push-ups, moving toward handstand push-up preparation. Archer push-ups, building toward one-arm push-up progressions. Deep squat holds and pistol squat work, hanging from a bar for shoulder health and decompression. And L-sit progressions for core strength and hip flexor development. Every single one of these movements train strength through a full range of motion, meaning they are simultaneously strength and flexibility work. You don't separate the two. The yoga flow block, 15 minutes. Immediately following the calisthenics work, while your body is warm and your tissue is pliable, you move into 15 minutes of yoga flow. This is not a rest period, it is an active continuation of your training. Choose sequences that complement what you just trained. If you worked your upper body heavily, move through poses that open your chest, shoulders, and thoracic spine. If you worked your lower body, flow through warrior sequences, pigeon pose progressions, and seated forward folds. This yoga block takes the strength you just built and begins to develop its expression across a wider range of motion. The static cool down, 10 minutes. End every session with 10 minutes of targeted static stretching. Identify the tightest areas from that day's session and give each one 60 to 90 seconds of patient, sustained attention. Breathe deeply throughout, using each exhale to invite a little more relaxation and length into the tissue. Never force a stretch. Work at about 70% of your maximum range, where you feel a clear sensation but no pain, and allow gravity and time to do the work rather than muscular effort. Plan 2, the yin yoga session, your weekly deep work. I want to spend a full section talking about yin yoga because it is one of the most powerful tools in this entire program and one of the least discussed in mainstream fitness culture. Yin yoga is fundamentally different from any other form of yoga or stretching you've encountered. It is slow, it is deep, it is almost entirely floor-based, and it targets the connective tissue, the fascia, the ligaments, the joint capsules, rather than the muscles. You hold each pose for 3 to 5 minutes, sometimes longer, in a completely passive, relaxed state. The muscles are not engaged. You are simply allowing gravity and time to do the work on. Plan 3, the Advanced Longevity Protocol. Lifetime Mobility Plan. Number 3, Plan 3 is for the serious, long-term practitioner. The person who is ready to make mobility the central pillar of their physical life and build a comprehensive program that they intend to maintain for decades. This plan is also ideal for anyone over the age of 40 who wants to be proactive and aggressive about protecting their physical capability as they move through the years ahead. It's the most complete plan I put together, and it requires the most commitment, but it also delivers the most extraordinary results. The advanced longevity protocol operates on two time scales simultaneously. The first is the daily time scale, what you do every single day to maintain and accumulate mobility gains. The second is the long arc time scale, how you structure your training over months and years to continue making progress rather than plateauing. Most people hit a plateau in their flexibility work because they get comfortable with what they have and stop pushing the boundaries. Plan 3 is designed specifically to prevent that. Daily non negotiables: 20 minutes of morning mobility work, including spinal sequencing, hip and shoulder circles, and a brief sun salutation flow. 5 minutes of evening breathing and decompression. These daily anchors are the backbone of everything else. 3 weekly calisthenics sessions: advanced calisthenics progressions, including handstand work, ring training, pistol squats, and loaded stretching movements like the Jefferson curl and shoulder dislocates with a dowel. These sessions develop strength in end range positions, the most powerful mobility training available. 2 weekly yoga sessions: one vinyasa style flow session for dynamic mobility and cardiovascular benefit, and one yin or restorative session for deep tissue work and nervous system recovery. These two yoga sessions address completely different systems and complement each other perfectly. 1 weekly dedicated stretching session: a 60-minute session using PNF techniques, extended holds, and targeted work on whatever areas have shown restriction during the week's training. This is your deep maintenance and progressive overload session for flexibility. Monthly reassessment and adjustment: at the end of every month, test your ranges of motion in key areas: hip flexion, hip external rotation, shoulder flexion and extension, thoracic rotation, hamstring length, ankle dorsiflexion, and adjust the following month's program to emphasize whatever areas need the most attention. Loaded stretching, the most powerful tool you're not using. I want to pause in our discussion of plans and talk about one specific technique that belongs in every advanced practitioner's toolkit: loaded stretching. This is the practice of stretching a muscle or group of muscles while it is under load, meaning resistance, rather than in a fully passive state. Loaded stretching is one of the most effective methods for developing what practitioners call active flexibility, which is the ability to control and stabilize your body throughout its full range of motion. The classic example is the Jefferson curl. You stand on an elevated surface, hold a light weight, a kettlebell, a dumbbell, or even just a dowel, and slowly roll your spine down toward the floor, one vertebra at a time, allowing the weight to pull you gently into a full spinal flexion under control. This movement simultaneously stretches your entire posterior chain, hamstrings, glutes, lower back, upper back, while requiring your spinal stabilizers to remain active and engaged. The result is a kind of strength through range of motion development that passive stretching simply cannot achieve. Other loaded stretching examples include the Romanian deadlift with a pause at the bottom, the deep squat with a light weight held in front for counterbalance, the slow eccentric lowering in a Nordic hamstring curl, and the shoulder to floor position held in a gymnastic style shoulder extension drill with a light band. All of these movements train your nervous system to allow and control movement through extreme ranges, which is exactly the capability you need for both athletic performance and long term injury resilience. Why loaded stretching beats passive stretching for athletic performance? Passive stretching improves flexibility in your relaxed resting state. Loaded stretching improves flexibility in your active performance state, meaning it carries over directly to athletic movements because it trains the tissue and nervous system under the same conditions they experience during sport and training. For peak performers, this distinction is enormous. Safety first, start light, always. The most important rule in loaded stretching is to start with far lighter resistance than you think you need. The goal is never to test your strength, it is to explore your range of motion with just enough load to provide a training stimulus. Use 5 to 10% of your normal working weight when you first introduce any loaded stretch and build from there only after your technique and tissue tolerance are well established. The mind body connection in peak performance. No conversation about mobility, yoga, and longevity is complete without talking about the mental dimension of this practice. This is not a fluffy add on. The mind body connection in athletic performance is one of the most well documented, well researched areas in sports science, and the implications are profound for anyone who wants to reach their highest level. Here's the foundational principle: your nervous system controls your muscles, and your mind controls your nervous system. The state of your mind, whether you are stressed, relaxed, focused, distracted, fearful, or confident, directly influences the tone and tension of your muscles. When you are chronically stressed, your sympathetic nervous system keeps your muscles in a state of elevated baseline tension. This not only impairs your flexibility and movement quality, it dramatically slows your recovery between training sessions, increases your injury risk, and reduces the ceiling of your physical performance. Managing your stress response is therefore not a luxury, it is a direct performance variable. Yoga and mindfulness based mobility practices are among the most powerful tools available for training your nervous system to spend more time in a parasympathetic, rest, recover, adapt state. When you breathe deeply and slowly through a challenging yoga position, you are literally training your vagus nerve to increase parasympathetic tone. When you hold a difficult stretch and practice not bracing against the discomfort, you are training your nervous system to tolerate challenge without escalating into a full stress response. These are skills that carry over directly into every high pressure performance situation in your life, athletic and otherwise. The elite athletes who understand this are the ones who meditate, who use breath work as part of their training protocol, who take their recovery as seriously as their performance sessions. They've understood something that takes most people decades to learn. The physical and the mental are not separate systems. They are one system, and training them together produces results that training either one in isolation never can. Common mistakes that kill your progress: being inconsistent. Flexibility and mobility respond to frequency above all else. 3 sessions a week for a year beats 10 sessions a week for a month every time. Daily short practice outperforms occasional marathon sessions. Build the habit first, then build the intensity. Pushing too hard, too fast. Forcing a stretch beyond what your nervous system will allow is not heroic. It triggers a protective response that actually reduces your range of motion. Work at 70 to 80% of your maximum range and allow the tissue to adapt at its own pace. Patience creates permanent change. Force creates injury. Only stretching what's already flexible. Most people stretch the areas that feel good to stretch, not the areas that need it most. Do a systematic assessment of your full range of motion and prioritize the restriction patterns that are most limiting your movement and performance. Comfort doesn't drive growth. Skipping the strength component. Flexibility without strength is actually dangerous. If you can get your body into a position but don't have the muscular strength to control it, you're at high risk for injury in that range. Always pair flexibility, work with calisthenics and loaded stretching to build strength alongside range of motion. Never updating the program. Your body adapts to repeated stimuli. A stretching routine that produced significant gains in your first 3 months will eventually plateau if you never change anything. Reassess regularly, introduce new movements, increase hold times, and add progressive challenge to continue making forward progress year after year. Nutrition and hydration for joint health and flexibility. This show is about peak performance in its fullest sense, and that means we can't talk about mobility without talking about what you put in your body. Your connective tissue, your fascia, tendons, ligaments, and joint cartilage is made of specific nutritional building blocks. And if those building blocks aren't present in adequate quantities in your diet, your mobility work will produce significantly less return on investment than it otherwise could. The single most important nutritional factor for connective tissue health is collagen synthesis, and the most important nutrient for collagen synthesis is vitamin C. Your body cannot produce collagen without adequate vitamin C, and collagen is the primary structural protein in your tendons, ligaments, and fascia. This means that if you're chronically low in vitamin C, which is more common than most people realize, especially in people who eat highly processed diets. Your connective tissue is essentially operating with a reduced repair budget. Prioritize whole food sources of vitamin C, bell peppers, citrus fruits, kiwi, strawberries, broccoli, and leafy greens. If your diet is inconsistent, a straightforward vitamin C supplement is one of the highest value additions you can make for your tissue health. Hydration is the other critical factor that almost everyone underestimates. Your connective tissue is hydrophilic. It literally absorbs water. When you are chronically dehydrated, your fascia becomes stiff, sticky, and less pliable. When you are well hydrated, it is more elastic, more responsive to stretching, and quicker to recover from physical stress. Most adults are operating in a mildly dehydrated state most of the time, and the stiffness they attribute to getting older is often substantially a hydration problem. Drink water consistently throughout the day, not just in large amounts at once, and notice how your body feels in your morning mobility routine within a week of consistently better hydration. The difference is striking and immediate. Collagen peptides. Supplementing with 10 to 20 grams of hydrolyzed collagen peptides daily, taken 30 to 60 minutes before your mobility session, has been shown in multiple studies to increase collagen synthesis in tendons and ligaments. It's one of the best supported supplements for connective tissue health. Omega 3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA from fish oil reduce systemic inflammation throughout the body, including in your joints and connective tissue. Chronic low grade inflammation is one of the primary drivers of stiffness, reduced range of motion, and accelerated tissue aging. 2 to 3 grams of combined EPA and DHA daily is a well supported dose. Magnesium. Magnesium is involved in over 300 enzymatic processes in the body and is critical for muscle relaxation. Most people are deficient. Low magnesium contributes directly to muscle cramping, tightness, and poor recovery. 2 to 300 milligrams of magnesium glycinate in the evening supports both muscle relaxation and sleep quality, sleep recovery, and the overnight mobility window. Every single adaptation your body makes, every gain in flexibility, every increase in range of motion, every improvement in connective tissue health happens during recovery, not during the training session itself. The training session is the stimulus. Sleep and rest are where the adaptation occurs, and the quality and quantity of your sleep therefore directly determines the rate at which you improve, how you feel in your body every day, and how well your tissue holds up over the long arc of years and decades. During sleep, your body produces human growth hormone in its largest daily pulse. Human growth hormone drives tissue repair and remodeling throughout the entire body, including your connective tissue. Deep, high quality sleep also activates your glymphatic system, the brain's waste removal mechanism, and drives the systemic repair processes that reduce inflammation in your joints and muscles. 7 to 9 hours of sleep is not a luxury or a sign of laziness. It is the physiological window during which your mobility work is translated into permanent physical change. There's also an interesting concept called the overnight mobility window that I want to share with you. After a focused evening stretching or yin yoga session, your tissue is in an elongated, lengthened state. If you go directly from that session to bed and sleep on it, your body consolidates those gains during the overnight repair process more effectively than if you had done the same session in the middle of the day. This is one of the reasons I consistently recommend evening flexibility work as part of these programs. The proximity to sleep amplifies the returns. Try to schedule your most intensive stretching sessions within 2 to 3 hours of bedtime and notice the difference in how open and spacious your body feels the following morning. One practical recovery tool worth mentioning is the contrast shower. Alternating between hot and cold water for 3 to 5 cycles at the end of your day. Each cycle consisting of 1 to 2 minutes hot, followed by 30 to 60 seconds cold, drives a pumping effect in the circulatory system that dramatically speeds up the removal of metabolic waste from your muscles and joints. Many elite athletes and practitioners swear by this practice, and it takes less than 10 minutes to implement. Combined with good sleep and consistent mobility work, contrast therapy can meaningfully accelerate your progress and reduce soreness between sessions. How to stay consistent for life. The psychology of the long game. We've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the physiology of stretching, the mechanics of calisthenics, the comprehensive benefits of yoga, the science of connective tissue, nutrition, sleep, recovery, and 3 complete training plans. But all of that knowledge is worth exactly zero if you don't apply it consistently over time. And consistency over time is where most people fail, not because they lack willpower or discipline, but because they haven't understood the psychology of building a genuine lifelong practice. Identity over outcome. The most powerful shift you can make is moving from I am trying to become more flexible to I'm a person who practices mobility every day. Identity based habits are far more durable than outcome based ones because they don't depend on external results to maintain motivation. They are simply an expression of who you are. Make it smaller than you think you need to. The enemy of consistency is ambition in the short term. When you commit to an hour of yoga every day and miss a day, the psychological weight of failure can derail you for weeks. When you commit to 10 minutes of morning movement, which you can always do no matter what, you build an unbroken chain of success that makes the habit practically automatic. Track progress in the right places. Don't measure success by how flexible you are today compared to an ideal. Measure it by how often you showed up this week compared to last week. Process goals maintain motivation far more effectively than outcome goals because they are entirely within your control every single day. Create environmental anchors. Put your yoga mat out the night before. Keep a foam roller next to the couch. Set a specific time for your morning routine and treat it like an appointment you cannot miss. Environment designs behavior, and behavior creates results. Make the right choice the easy choice by arranging your environment to support it. Find community. Human beings are social animals. Training in community, whether that's a yoga class, an online accountability group, or a single training partner at Nemaus, dramatically increases adherence. Find your people, the ones who will ask you how your practice went, the ones who will notice when you go missing. Community is the most underrated performance enhancer available. A message for every age and stage in your 20s. This is the time to build the foundation. Your body is responsive, your tissue is pliable, and any flexibility you build now will be dramatically easier to maintain than it will be to reclaim later. Don't wait for stiffness to motivate you. Build your practice now and bank the compound interest. The habits you establish in your 20s are the gifts you give yourself at 60, in your 30s. This is often when people first notice the consequences of neglecting mobility. Stiff back in the morning, tighter hips than you remember, the first hints of recurring discomfort. This is your wake up call and your greatest opportunity simultaneously. The interventions work beautifully at this age. Start plan 1 or 2 immediately and commit to making mobility a permanent part of your life from this point forward. In your 40s. Your 40s demand a different relationship with your body than your 20s did, and that's not a bad thing. This is when intentionality becomes your greatest performance advantage. Plan 3 was built for this decade. Focus on active flexibility, loaded stretching, regular yin work, and the quality of your sleep and nutrition. The gap between people who invest in their bodies in their 40s and those who don't becomes enormous by their 60s. 50 and beyond. It is never too late. I cannot say that clearly enough. The research on flexibility training in older adults is consistently extraordinary. People in their 70s and 80s who begin regular stretching and gentle calisthenics programs show dramatic improvements in range of motion, balance, functional strength, and quality of life within weeks of beginning. Your body wants to move. Closing thoughts, episode 104. We've covered a lot of ground today, and I hope you're walking away with something real. Not just inspiration, but a framework, a set of plans, and a deeper understanding of why this work matters so profoundly. Mobility is not the boring part of fitness. It is not the thing you do, when you can't do the real training. It is the foundation upon which every other physical capability is built, maintained, and expressed over a lifetime. Calisthenics gives you strength through your full range of motion. Stretching maintains and expands that range. Yoga integrates strength, flexibility, breath, and mindfulness into a complete practice. Yin yoga remodels your connective tissue at the deepest level. Loaded stretching builds active flexibility that transfers directly to performance. And all of these practices, done consistently over years and decades, create a body that functions extraordinarily well at every age, a body that moves freely, recovers efficiently, and continues to perform at a high level long after the people who neglected their mobility have been sidelined by the inevitable consequences of that neglect. This is episode 104 of the Peak Performance Podcast. I'm Brad Young, and I believe with our everything in me that the most important thing you can do for your long-term performance and your quality of life is exactly what we talked about today. Start where you are. Use plan 1 if you're a beginner. Use plan 2 if you have training experience. Use plan 3 if you're ready to make this the center of your physical life. But start today. With 10 minutes tomorrow morning, that's all it takes to begin. Movement is the language your body speaks. Mobility is how you keep that language rich, expressive, and powerful for the rest of your life. Thank you for spending this time with me. Share this episode with someone you love who needs to hear it. Leave a review if this show has added value to your life. And I'll see you in episode 105. Until then, move well, recover intentionally, and perform at your peak every single day.